Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of ECHOA. ECHOA is an international, inspiring, and informative webinar series by Global University Systems that brings to you some of the most interesting businesses and business leaders from across the globe. Our topic today is driving business change, and we're joined by Louise Johnson, who's CEO of Fuse. Louise brings over 20 years of experience in the sport and entertainment marketing industry, and she's worked with some of the world-leading brands, including Vodafone, FedEx, and HSBC. Today, we'll explore what it's like to be the only female CEO in the UK sports marketing industry. And we'll talk about the world of sports and entertainment marketing. And Louise will also share her thoughts on leadership and inclusivity in the workplace. Louise, a very warm welcome. We're so excited to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me. Great to be here.
Thank you for being here. We're really excited to have you. And Louise, just before we start, we have this tradition at Gust. Gust places a lot of importance on its company values. And I would like to tease out one of those values and hear what your thoughts are on collaboration. What does collaboration mean to Fuse?
Yeah, sure. I think collaboration was the one that I picked out from your values, because we have four, which is trusted, collaborative, committed, and restless. And I think collaboration is really, really key at Fuse. We're an agency where we have lots of individual specialists. We have to come together and collaborate to come together to deliver for our clients. But not only that, I think in this world and day and age, everybody has got to collaborate and be more agile. So I think it's a really, really important trait and skill set to have. You can't work in isolation anymore. And thirdly, as well, we work in part of Omnicom Media Group, which is a big media holding company, and we have to collaborate with our agency partners to ultimately sort of get new business as well. So it's a big value for us, which we put a lot of emphasis on.
Thank you, Louise. And it's also a big value for every one of us, isn't it, in everyday life, collaborating to achieve more with with everybody around it.
Yes.
So with collaboration, we start off, and to our viewers, do some questions for Louise in the chat box, and we'll come back to you during the Q&A session. So Louise, let's dive straight in. One of the burning questions of our students is, first of all, they want to hear about your journey. How was your journey? How's your journey been from your studies to where you are today to becoming a CEO? Could you tell us a bit more, please?
Yeah, of course. So I didn't actually know what I wanted to do. I've always treated it like a process of elimination, which I'm sure, unlike all of your fabulous students, are very clear on what they wanted to do, and will go on and do amazing vacations. But I started off doing. I absolutely loved history. I did a history degree. I went to University College and did a history degree, which was just brilliant. I loved it and met some amazing people and had great experiences, but also had this kind of great dynamic of living in London, studying in London, but also doing lots of work experience in London as well. So I ended up doing lots of internships whilst I was studying. I did a lot of in fashion PR whilst I was a student. And then when I left university, I got an internship on a sponsorship program, trying to get sponsorship for a music production, which was about a music production in the Sahara Desert, literally near Timbuktu, which was incredible. So I was phoning up, getting sponsorship for, suntan lotion for the crew, or water. So it's brilliant. And I was actually then lucky enough to go and help them film and be part of the production crew. So actually going to Mali, being in the Sahara Desert, which was incredible. But then I came back. Yeah, it was brilliant. I look back now and go, oh my God, we could have got kidnapped. But but then I came back and I was like, I've got to get a proper job now, and ended up doing some public relations in the agency where we were using the offices for free, and called Aspect Communications. And I worked on big events, which we did the PR round, and Vodafone and HSBC were two of my first clients. So I did that for a couple of years, and then moved over to Aurelia PR, which was very much around luxury PR. So I worked on booze and travel, basically. So some sort of private islands in the Caribbean, and Diageo premium portfolio, which was fantastic. But I genuinely felt that fashion wasn't particularly what I wanted to go into. And then I went to go and see some recruitment consultants, and after about 9 interviews, I got a job going in-house to Vodafone Global. And I was a bit nervous at the time. I was not sure whether going, agency to in-house at sort of, 25, 26 was the right thing to do. Maybe that was what I should be doing later on in life. But I thought, oh my goodness, it's Vodafone Global. It's on a sponsorship PR team, working with Ferrari, Man United, the England cricket team. I've got to go for it.
Exciting.
Yeah, exactly. It was brilliant, and that's where I met a fantastic guy who you obviously work with, Julian Cousins, who was also on the PR team on the UK, and was a huge inspiration to work with. So yeah, ended up being in global PR team at Vodafone Global for about 3 or 4 years, working on the creme de la creme of sports sponsorship, and I met some amazing people, and some of those people I still work with now. But it's definitely a very pivotal part of my career. If you could line up a calendar of your career, I think working at Vodafone was a real turning point for me. I loved it. We moved from Ferrari to McLaren as title partner. We moved from Man United to the Champions League, and we did lots of music sponsorship. So I was very lucky enough to go to 14 Formula One races each year and be the face of Vodafone on track. It was incredible, perfect for a 26-year-old with no responsibilities at home. Yeah, couldn't do that now. I'm knackered. But then I sort of did that for a couple of years, and my boss was great, but unfortunately was never going to leave. So I looked to kind of broaden my horizons, and then took a job at RBS in their global marketing. So I moved from PR to marketing. However, I basically joined the day of the financial crisis. So I walked into Bishopsgate, the offices in Bishopsgate, and all the TV screens, it had RBS bailout of £40 billion. And I was like, oh my God, what have I done? I don't want this job. I don't want this job. My new boss calling me saying, don't worry, you've got a job. I was like, I don't want it. But of course, I signed a contract. And I spent 18 months there, and actually it was incredible because you learn so much more in a crisis. And you were coming in and you had to, I was led to believe I was going to negotiate a new big title contract for a Formula One team. Actually, what I ended up doing was coming out of all the sponsorship contracts, reducing all the budgets, getting rid of all the agencies, and having to really really repackage and repurpose all of their contracts into other brands that weren't RBS, so Direct Line and Churchill and things like that. So I learned a huge amount about how to be a leader as well there, because I worked in London, and it was like, right, you've just got to get on with the job, and you will be working with Number 10 to exit these partnerships because some of it had an impact on the economy. But in Edinburgh, where I had to go once every 2 weeks, of course, all the guys in Edinburgh had been there since they were, 18, 19, helped build this huge global brand from, a small little, basically branch in Edinburgh to a global RBS brand. So it was very difficult then to understand and accept what happened. And so you had to really flex your leadership skill totally. So you had to be lots more empathetic and slow down, take them on a journey, explain why. Whereas London, it was, you had expectations to move very quickly on things. So amazing experience. But after 18 months, I thought, I've done as much as I possibly can. And then got a phone call from one of my old bosses at Vodafone saying he had started a sport offering at Omnicom Media Group. Did I fancy the challenge? And I went, yes, I do. And so, I ended up going to Omnicom and setting up Fuse, which is, at the time, you had this brilliant blend of sports sponsorship experts sitting next to media teams, and media teams had a huge amount of knowledge on, audiences, where brands were trying to go, and high-level relationships with a CMO or marketing director who held the media budget. So actually, putting the two together was very powerful, especially during the financial crisis, when you were having to, justify a sponsorship spend, or it was no longer a whim of a CEO. So that's kind of how we started, basically as a startup, but in a very, very big organisation. And I've been here 12 years now, which is incredible. I started up, I think we're about sort of 7 people, and now we're about just under 300 globally. So it's been a ride. But every year my job has changed. So I look back and go, oh my goodness, it's 12 years, I've got to leave. But actually every year they've given me a new challenge. So it feels like I've had 12 different jobs in those 12 years.
It's incredible to hear your journey from 7 people to 300. How was it for you? I mean, how was the journey? How was it to see the business grow and expand?
I have to be honest, in the early years, it was like the wild, wild west because you were walking into a meeting and a client said, oh, can you do this for us? And you'd be able to be a startup. So you turn around and go, yep, we can do that. And you'd walk out going, oh my God, how are we going to do this? But you always found a way. And, we always found solutions and, we grew from there. And I think, it's, again, a combination of having sort of sponsorship experts, sport, and sitting with the media teams was incredibly powerful at that time because it was about producing truly integrated work. Also, the proximity to brands, big media clients. You could, say, okay, well, actually, we've got these 4 media agencies. We're going to implant a fuser into all of those agencies and basically get them to work the corridors and convert you business. And it worked. It really did. So we were able to quickly pick up some work for Sony PlayStation or for Visa or for Vodafone. And it was quite funny, actually. I remember we won a pitch for Vodafone UK, and I was going back into the Vodafone UK offices in Newbury, and the security men were looking at me and they were like, have you just been on a really long holiday? Or, and I was like, no, I left. I didn't leave. I'm coming back to Vodafone are now my client. I went full circle. But it's been an incredible journey. There have been lots of highs and lows. You start up as a kind of, we can take on the world mentality. And then you get bigger, you get to sort of 40, 50 people, and you become a medium-sized business. And, there's lots of growth pains with that. And you have to adapt and put more processes in place. And, that's quite weird when you've just been sort of flying by the seat of your pants a bit for a couple of years, thinking, oh my God, it's making loads of money, woohoo. And we've got great culture and it's very organic. And then you get to 40 or 50 people and you have to take a step back and go, no, okay, we need proper HR processes. We need proper finance processes. We need to be really buttoned down with all of our, all of our culture initiatives. So that's been interesting. And then you have another growth spurt and you get to 80 or 90 and then even more process has to be put in place. And now we're obviously globally as well. So it's been a very big evolution as well over those 12 years.
It's incredible to hear, Journey. And a big shout out to Julian, who's definitely watching us today.
Hi, Jules.
Julian, do send us a message in the chat box. We'll move on to the next question. Louise, during your career, you have been recognized for the work you've done, not only within the marketing, but also in championing diversity and gender inclusivity. What are some of the proudest achievements in your career, and how important is it to continue to learn and build on your success?
Thank you. Really good question. I'm really proud of building a very female-focused agency. I'm the CEO. I have a female managing director, a female CFO and COO. That's at a board level, so we're 60% female up a board. Then our sort of senior leadership team, so the next level down, is 76% female. And then overall as an agency, we're just about 57% female, which is great. And we don't have a gender gap. It's actually the other way, in favour of females in terms of salary. So that's really good. And I'm really proud of that because I think, you role model what you should be doing. And the fact that you have a female CEO who is promoting gender inclusivity, putting initiatives in place, putting mentoring and coaching in place for females, particularly in sports marketing, which is predominantly male, unfortunately. I'm sorry, but it still is. So I'm really proud of that. And because of that, we've then been able to have more females working on sports marketing, which has then impacted women's sport. So we've done game-changing work in cycling with Skoda and, getting gender parity in female cycling around the Tour de France. We were able to convince our PepsiCo client, who have sponsored the Champions League for many years, to actually be the first male sponsor to go and sponsor the Women's Champions League and have equal status in terms of how they market it. And not only that, we're looking at things like the British and Irish Lions, how we can get a feasibility study done by our client Royal London to look at what the female equivalent can be. So I think if we didn't have some of those senior females in place, I'm not sure whether we've been able to push hard some of the work that we've done in women's sports. So I'm really proud of that, actually. And, I still go into a sports business conference, and I think there's me and about 4 or 5 other females. So I'm proud, and it's there's lots of things you get asked to do as a the only sort of UK female CEO. And sometimes you don't want to be a tokenistic, but actually I always grab those opportunities because, you're given the opportunity, you've got a voice, use it and pave the way for other ladies.
Absolutely. What are some of the ways that both male and female students starting their careers can champion inclusivity within the workplace? What would you advise?
Yeah, really good question. I think the biggest thing I say to my team is that it's everybody's responsibility. Of course, you've got to lead from the front and set a strategy at the top on what we're doing. So from my perspective, we do a really great job on gender, which obviously I just talked through. But what we were not very good at is with our multicultural stats, and we're getting there. We have very strict KPIs in place. By the end of next year, we should be 30% of our workforce is from multicultural backgrounds, and then it's we're moving on that. But we've got to put those processes in place. We've got to work with third-party partners to help us do that at a grassroots level, but also at middle and senior management. But it's not just us, it's got to be everybody from the account execs to the middle management. Everybody's got their part to play. So I think that's the first thing that we always say, it's everyone's responsibility. I think the second piece is get trained. There's so much amazing training that you can do for free, or experts can come in. We do a lot of training, not only at a Fuse level, but also from a Omnicom Media Group of parent company perspective. So I think that's the other piece that's really important. And I was working, I won't name who it is, but I was working in another organisation, volunteering in another organisation, and there was a real mix of people from different backgrounds, different ages. And I was quite surprised of how different people's attitudes were to D&I, even from reading a survey and, people, the drop-down box of, who do you resonate, you're black, white, multi-ethnic, and some people just didn't understand why you had to do this and why we were asking these questions. And I found it flabbergasting because, you read the papers, there's so much in the news about, particularly around the marketing industry, about, it needs to change, not only in terms of, your cultural, the makeup of your agencies or your brands, but also representation in an advert or on TV. It's everywhere. And you're also asked to do so much training. So I was really shocked, actually, that there was a whole bunch of people in this group who hadn't done that. And I was saying, have you not been trained? I'm like, no. Wow. You're like, oh my God, yeah, there's so much free stuff that you can do. This is your responsibility. You've got to embrace this. Get trained, I think. And I think call things out as well. If you see bad behaviours, you've got to call it out. Yeah. It's not okay to, say somebody's, queer or, or they're a fag or something like that. That's not okay. You've got to call it out, and you've got to create an inclusive culture. And it's not just about recruiting people from different cultures, different social economic backgrounds, or multicultural backgrounds, or getting more females in, or working parents in, or different ages. You've then got to make sure you've got a really inclusive culture. So calling things out is really important.
Great tips, Louise. Thank you. So you mentioned you're the only female CEO in the sports marketing industry in the UK. What challenges have you faced along the way, and what advice would you give to female students who may face similar challenges in their careers?
Really good question. I would say a couple of things, actually. The first is don't doubt yourself. I became a managing director at a very, very, not early age, actually, so I think I was about 33, 34, but I was managing director and only sort of really promoted quite quickly before my CEO left. So they kind of gave me the agency to run as a newly appointed MD. Yeah. And of course, I had such imposter syndrome. I was like, oh my God, I'm not ready to do this. I'm not sure if I want to do it. Whereas a bloke would come in and go, yep, I can do this. It's no problem. And it took me a while, actually, to build up my confidence. I think, firstly, because, again, I'm in sports marketing, where most of the rights holders are 20 years older than me. They're all male. They're all, from a certain background. Yeah. So when I was going to see them to say, I'm the new managing director, they kind of, I don't think they took me very seriously, even though I represented $100 million worth of their partner investment. So that was really tough. Yeah. But also as well, I was quite shocked by what they were coming out with in terms of their point of view on the world and what clients wanted. And I think from that really sort of took me back, because I thought, hang on a minute, I actually know so much more than you. I've just got to find my voice. because where I sit within a big parent company like Omnicom, you are exposed to really big thinking from, what's going on in the marketing world, what's going on in different businesses, and you're exposed to so much. And then you kind of go back to our level, which is sport or entertainment marketing, and how that can answer some of those big questions, which is, what's going on in the world. And it took me, I had to say, it probably took me about 6 to 9 months to kind of, do you know what, I've got a voice here, I've got to use it, and I do know more than you, and I've got to kind of earn that respect as well through my knowledge, like anyone else would. So I think the next time I saw certain rights holders, I won't mention who they were, but they are based in Switzerland. We gave a presentation on what's going on in the landscape. And I started off saying, thanks so much for having us. I've met some of you before. Just to let you know, I'm Louise, I'm the managing director. I represent $150 million worth of your brands. And I think you should take note, because this is what we're advising your brands on, and why actually maybe your property is or isn't right for their investment. And then we went through into all of the different, kind of here's what's going on in the macro industry. Here's where maybe your football property can answer a question or can't answer a question. And you could just see their eyes kind of light up and go, okay, we need to take this lady seriously. So I think my learning would be, don't doubt yourself. Everyone has got such amazing knowledge. It's about finding your voice. And I think once you've found that voice, then, the world's your lobster, as I like to say. But yeah, it's finding that voice. And I think there are certain ways to do it as well. It's, to make sure that I come across in a very authoritative way, I will really prepare for a meeting, for example. So my advice would be to any of the females on the call, make sure you rehearse for a presentation so you know it inside out. Make sure you know all of your numbers if you're doing a commercial presentation. Make sure you know your content inside out. So when you go into that meeting, you look like you are so confident and so knowledgeable, and that will give you inner confidence. So I think there's a couple of things that you can do. It's the 6 Ps. It's someone told me once. It's proper preparation prevents piss poor performance. So yeah, rehearse 6 times. That's what I would say.
That's good. Goodbye. We have to keep that in mind.
Yeah, sorry, I shouldn't swear.
No, it's good. No, it's good. Liz, you mentioned that you're a member of the Omnicom's Diversity and Inclusivity Steering Committee. No, we have already had that. You've already mentioned that. Sorry, I just got lost in here. Yes, this is what I wanted to ask you. You are an active member of the Women in Advertising and Communications Leaders.
Yeah.
So touching up on a few of the points you've already mentioned earlier, and you have also been mentioned one of the sports leaders under 40, the class of 2018. So what tips can you give to students to develop leadership skills and qualities? I mean, you've already mentioned some of the points, but anything in particular where you would advise students, how can they develop the skills that would help them to aspire to these goals or get to these goals?
Yeah, sure, of course. I think it's about, from a leadership perspective, you've got to be really comfortable with who you are and what you're doing. And lots of people talk about authentic leadership, which is true. You need to be authentic. You've got to show up in an authentic way. But I think, taking a step back of how you find out your authenticness, I think do some work to work out what's really important to you. What are your values? What are your personal values? Naturally, my personal values are very aligned to my agency values in terms of, being trusted, being truthful, always restless to see what's next and how can we be innovative, collaborate and be committed to the job. So those are very much aligned with my personal values, but also what gives you strength and what do you get excited about. So for me, I get really excited about, what's the new trend, what's the next strategic challenge, what talent are we bringing in and what are we learning, always learning and evolving. So I think as a leader, it's really important to understand what are your values and what gives you that energy, because I think if you can then go into a room and show up with that in front of your team, that's going to be very, very important. And I think showing up is so important these days because, as a leader, you're going to have bad days. Of course you are. You have good days and bad days. But I can't go to my board and go, oh my God, I've had the worst day today. It's been awful. This person's annoyed me. That's gone wrong. This client's annoying. You just can't. You've got to hold that in. And you've got to show up in I'm confident, I'm calm. This is kind of, how we're leading the agency. So I think about how you show up. Think about what's your authentic self, but also as well, think about how you're feeding and watering yourself. And lots of people talk about work-life balance and they can't get that. And we spend a lot of our time with our team who, when work-life balance is out of kilter, we'll kind of really mentor and coach them to get that back, because it's really important. If you're not nurturing yourself and you're not resting, then you're not showing up to work in a great way. You're not going to be any use to us, and you're not going to be great for our clients. So I think, it's really important about how you're feeding and watering yourself as well. And then I think also as well, kind of think about what are your goals as a leader as well. Like, what's your vision? What's your strategy? Because you want to, as a leader, you've got to make some quick decisions. And although so for example, we have a 3-year vision. We also have an annual commercial plan as well. But in terms of the 3-year vision, we'll say, okay, I want to be a worldwide practice by 2024. We want to hit X amount of revenue, and we want to be unified under sport and entertainment, and we want to do X, Y, and Z. And we'll have goals to get there over the next 3 years. So have a clear plan. Of course, things are going to come in which might sort of take you slightly off that plan, like a pandemic or potential recession coming up. But as long as you've got that base plan, you can allow to flex. And I think as a leader, you've got to make quick decisions. So having that plan allows you to go, well, is it off plan or is it on plan? If it's off plan, we're not doing it. If it's on plan, go. So I think kind of really understanding what's required for the business, and how are you going to stick to that, because that will allow you to adapt really quickly. So I think those are some of the skills that I have developed over the last couple of years. I think the pandemic actually probably sharpened some of those. You sit there and you build an incredibly successful business over 10 years, and the business is going like that, and overnight it drops, and I just remember with the BBC News coming on that Formula One had stopped, the Premier League had closed, rugby had stopped. I had my head in my hands going, oh my God. And you take a step back and you go, well, I haven't done this. The world pandemic is not my fault, and all of my competition will be in exactly the same place. So you have to be really resilient and come back. Oops, sorry,
It's the microphone, I think.
Is that okay? Is that better?
It's fine. Yeah, we can hear you better now. Yes. Yeah.
Apologies. Sorry.
No worry. No worry.
Yeah. So I think the pandemic definitely honed my skills to be, just very focused and targeted. But yeah, that's my lessons.
You've worked on some of the top brands at Fuse and throughout your career in sports and marketing, sports and entertainment marketing. What tips can you give out to our students when it comes to collaborating with world-leading brands?
Really good question. I think for me, going back to the value about being trusted, we try and aspire to being trusted advisors for our clients. And to do that, it's really important for a global brand that you get to know their business. We only work on sports sponsorship or entertainment marketing. And of course, there are so many broader bits to the business. So I think one of the things that we pride ourselves is having a really good understanding of what's going on in their business at a very high level. Understanding, where they're going commercially, what's their business results, reading the annual report, listening to the stakeholder calls, the earning calls, and everything that you can try and get some understanding of their business and how that will then impact what you're doing is incredibly important. And I think it's something that a lot of people take for granted, that we take for granted. I remember sitting in a pitch 2 weeks ago, and it was just a chemistry session, and we'd taken some information from their company report on around their corporate strategy and the language, and we sort of related everything that we talked about back to that. And we got through to the next round, thank God. And they said one of the reasons we actually got you to the next round because you'd actually taken the initiative to read our company report. We thought, oh my God, does everybody not? Oh, I thought everybody did that, but they didn't. So that's obviously a plus. So I think understanding broader business is really important. And then the second thing is getting into the mindset of your clients, because as an agency, you're sort of 2 or 3 steps removed from what's going on internally in a big corporate business. And sometimes, your idea might not get signed off, or there's a change in direction and you're like, oh, this is so annoying. It's a great idea. Why? And actually, there's a whole bunch of reasons internally that the clients has, because that idea, change in direction from a different business unit. So I think what we try and do is spend as much time with our clients as possible to understand the challenges that they have, so we can always be thinking one step ahead. and really trying to go, right, okay, what do you need for that next meeting, and how can we help you with X, Y, and Z, or what other stakeholders do we need to engage about this? So I think that's really, really important. And I think the third thing as well is spending as much time with your clients as possible. When I became CEO, I asked a very, very successful lady at Omnicom Media Group, a lady called Philippa Brown, who's now the PhD worldwide CEO. I said, how much time as a CEO, how much time do you spend with your clients? And she said, 80%. Clients, 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 clients. That's all you need to start thinking about. Well, not start, but continue to think about in a different way, because it's about a huge amount of relationships. It's about, again, finding out information on their business. But you need to be in front of their faces. You need to, have all that personal touch, and it's really important. So I think building those relationships to understand all of the things that we've just spoken about is key. So those would be the three things I think that have given us a huge amount of success. Being that trusted advisor, understanding their business, and spending as much time as you can with them as well.
The final question is, for students who have been inspired by a personal journey, by the work that you do at Fuse, and by the sports marketing industry, are there any internships, work experience opportunities, or job opportunities at Fuse? And if so, how can students apply?
Great question. Yes, of course, there is actually. We're hiring at the moment. We've got quite a few open roles. So if you go onto our LinkedIn page, that's where all of our current open roles are available. If not, obviously you can email me. So Fuse is sport and entertainment marketing. So we help brands grow their business through the power of sport and entertainment. And we also help rights holders to help them commercialise their assets as well. So within Fuse, we have different services. So our strategy and data and analytics team, we have our activation team, our creative and planning team, PR team, events team, and measurement and evaluation. So we've got a huge amount of services. At the moment, we are just looking at a new internship program. We had one called Spark. We're just refreshing that, actually. And again, it's a real focus in terms of hitting certain social economic backgrounds and multicultural backgrounds through different partners at grassroots level to come in. But once that's refreshed, of course, apply. But yeah, I say, drop me a note or look at our LinkedIn page. We are recruiting for quite a few roles at the moment, so we'd love to hear from some fresh talent.
Sounds good. Well, our students, you're listening. So type away, go into LinkedIn, have a look at the Fuse, the internship opportunities at Fuse, and there you go. So Louise, let's switch gears and take a look at some of the questions we received
in
the chat box. So we have one of the first questions is, what are some of the typical skills needed to thrive in the marketing industry?
Sorry, what are the typical skills?
What skills needed to thrive in the marketing industry?
Good question. I think being really inquisitive. I think, going back to, because you can learn marketing skills, you can go on marketing courses, of course, which I'm sure many of you are. But I think being really inquisitive of why is something working? What's the return on a campaign? What's the return on a brand campaign or a product campaign? And being really inquisitive, what other levers can drive a client's business, other than maybe, your set marketing specialism. So for us, for example, we spend a lot of time with our media colleagues saying, look, your John Lewis client has this problem. It might not just be a media answer. Actually, we can come in a different way. So I think being really inquisitive is a really great skill for a marketing specialist. And then the second one, I'd say, would be really personable as well. I think, people want to work with really nice people, work hard, be nice to each other. So I think being really personable, and marketeers spend so much time with their colleagues or with their agencies or with their supply, media platforms and things like that. And I think because you spend so much time with them, you've got to have a really great attitude. You've got to be empathetic, and you've got to be smart, and you've got to be driven. But I think just try and be as personable and as authentic as you can as well.
The next question is, in your journey as a female leader, have you experienced sexism? And do you have any tips for female leaders?
Good question. I personally haven't. Obviously, I've had people not taking me as seriously, but I wouldn't necessarily say that's sexism, although I have seen it in other agencies or other rights holders. And again, as a peer group of female industry ladies in the business, we've obviously helped those individuals have the courage to speak up about it. And I think you've got to, if there is a case of sexism, you've got to bring it up totally. We've signed up to the Me Too, Time To campaign, which is about stamping out sexism in the advertising industry. So we've also put all of our team, all of the Fuse team in London on a sexual harassment course as well. So that's absolutely mandatory. So you come into the business, you've got to do that. So as a female, I think, of course, you still hear so much about it in any industry, and I think everybody's got to call it out immediately and have that support network around that certain female, because it's a really horrible thing to go through, but your confidence gets knocked, and people think that you're lying. So I think you've got to have that support network. There's an incredible amount of work that WAC will do, actually. So the Women in Advertising and Communications Leaders group that I'm part of, they are very, very strong about that network and support, and that they do a lot of work around stamping out, in particular in the advertising industry, any of these certain challenges. So I would encourage you to join any mentoring groups, or there's Bloom, which is great actually for sort of slightly, I suppose, sort of people going into their first jobs or second and third jobs. Bloom is very good in the UK. So I would try and get a different peer group as well, because you never know when you might need that additional help.
Listeners, when sports stopped during the pandemic, how did it affect Fuse, and what did you learn from the whole experience?
It was brutal, I have to be honest with you. It was very difficult, I have to say, but it was difficult for everybody. Every industry had challenges, of course. I think there were good and bad bits. I have to say, as a business, of course, our revenue dropped, or our projected revenue dropped by 34%. So that was tough. But what we did do was incredible amount of R&D very quickly. So, I remember going into my bosses 2 weeks after the first time that we were in lockdown. No one asked us to do this, but we went in with a business plan and said, we know out of all of the agencies at Omnicom Media Group UK, we're going to be the ones that get hit the hardest by this. So here's our plan. And, we're going to get people to do sabbaticals or 4-day weeks, and unfortunately no pay rises and stuff like that. And by October, when we think our industry will bounce back, if we haven't made up that money, then of course we will have to look at redundancies. So we went in we were straight off the bat with a plan of how we can reduce cost, how we can save as many of our staff as possible. We had to put a huge amount of the team on furlough, because a large part of what we do is around major events. So, but that was good. But even the people we put on furlough, we gave them fantastic learning courses, and we paid for people to go on IPA courses. So they're all really active as well. So they came, not work, so they weren't allowed to do any work, but in terms of actually learning and development. We didn't lose a single client, which was great. Our clients were incredibly supportive, and they, treated it like we're in it together. And we managed to protect as much fee as possible. But we also had to pivot, like everybody did, from a physical world to a virtual world. So our digital and, I suppose, digital and virtual brand experience capabilities accelerated. We put everybody on a digital course, virtual digital training academy as well. So there were lots of bits that, forced you to rethink about the business. And we spent a lot of time as a board going, okay, well, what got us here from the first 10 years is not going to get us to the next 10 years. So what are we good at? What are we not good at? And actually, we made some sacrifices. We got rid of a few different services because we wanted to focus on the more profitable areas and go back into pure sport and entertainment. So yeah, it was interesting. I have to say, though, it was really difficult. We had to make some redundancies, and that was really hard, because I never felt that this business would be in a position where we needed to make 20, 25 redundancies, and that was hard. And it wasn't so much just the redundancies, but at the first time, you had to put people out into a jobless market, and as much as you can control what you can control and don't worry about the rest, I took that really personally, because again, it's they're your family. Fuse is very much like a family, and that was really hard. But yeah, it was really brutal, and you kind of, every time you thought we were going to get back into normality, you'd get another lockdown. Oh, here we go again.
God,
yeah. So it was brutal, but again, you learn a lot. Resilience is something that I think all the Fusers showed a huge amount of, whether you were on furlough, whether you were in virtual working. Just simple things like turning 110 people in London from a from an office environment overnight into working from home. Getting that all up and running was incredible, in literally 24 hours. So yeah, a huge amount of resilience and a huge lot of R&D. So when we came out of it properly again, we were actually in a very strong position to capitalise on the bounce back. And we've had an incredible 8 weeks. We've done, Champions League for men and women's. We've done the Europa Leagues. We've done Wimbledon for Vodafone. We've done festivals for Elton John. We've got teams doing the Euros at the moment. So it feels like it's back to 2019 levels.
Louise, on that great note, we are also coming slowly to an end to this webinar. So thank you so much for sharing your expertise and insights with us. It's been a pleasure to have you here.
Well, thank you so much for having me. And yeah, I really appreciate it. It's great to talk to you, Jackson.
Thank you, Louise. And to our viewers, thank you for joining us today. We hope you've enjoyed this webinar. We wish you a great summer holiday, and we'll see you after the summer break. Thank you and goodbye.